This is the story of Chris, a talented African-American photographer, and his white girlfriend Rose. They're a perfect match in every way, except for one thing society still struggles with: the color of their skin. Despite the barriers, Chris and Rose truly love each other and are planning to get married. One weekend, Rose invites Chris to visit her family's home in the countryside. Chris feels a bit nervous, unsure how her family will react to their relationship. Rose reassures him that her parents aren't racist and that they'll love him, but he still can't shake the uneasy feeling. On the way there, Chris calls his best friend Rod, who works as a TSA officer, to thank him for watching his dog while he's gone. With everything sorted, they continue the drive to her parents' estate. When they arrive, it's clear Rose's family is wealthy. Her dad, Dean, is a respected neurosurgeon and her mom, Missy, is a psychiatrist. Dean gives Chris a tour of their beautiful house, but Chris feels uncomfortable when he notices that all the house staff, the groundskeeper and the maid, are black. Sensing the tension, Dean explains that the two workers used to care for his parents, and after they passed away he couldn't bear to let them go. Chris finds the explanation a little odd but decides to let it go. Later, the four of them sit on the porch for a friendly chat. Rose's parents mention that they're hosting a big gathering the next day, and the conversation turns emotional when Chris talks about his mother's death in a car accident when he was a kid. The mood gets heavy, so the parents quickly switch to lighter topics. Dean notices Chris might be a smoker and suggests hypnosis therapy, something Missy specializes in, to help him quit. Georgina, the housekeeper, brings them tea, but her behavior is strange. She smiles oddly, almost forced, and looks stressed. Missy scolds her sharply and sends her away. A moment later, Rose's younger brother Jeremy shows up for dinner, and things get even weirder. Jeremy starts talking about how black people supposedly have genetic advantages, and even tries to challenge Chris to a fight. Thankfully, Rose's parents stop him before it gets out of hand. Later, in private, Rose apologizes for her family's behavior and vents about how embarrassing they were. That night, unable to sleep, Chris steps outside for a smoke. Suddenly, he sees the groundskeeper Walter sprinting straight toward him at full speed, only to veer off at the last second. Then, he spots Georgina staring blankly at her reflection in the window. Unsettled, Chris goes back inside, where he finds Missy sitting alone with her tea. She invites him to sit down and talk. As she stirs her cup, the sound begins to affect Chris strangely. She starts asking deep, personal questions about his mother's death, and though he tries to resist, he finds himself compelled to answer. His body goes limp and Missy commands him to sink. Suddenly, he feels himself falling, trapped in darkness, unable to move. She calls this terrifying place the sunken place. Moments later, Chris jolts awake in Rose's bed, thinking it was just a nightmare. He gets a text from Rod and brushes it off. But when he later speaks to Walter, the man mentions the hypnosis, and Chris realizes it wasn't a dream after all. The next day, the Armitages' home fills with guests for the big party. Dozens of wealthy white people arrive, and all of them seem unnervingly interested in Chris. They touch his arm, compliment his physique, and make inappropriate comments. One woman even asks Rose if it's true what they say about black men in bed. Another couple calls dark skin in style. Chris feels increasingly uncomfortable and looks for somewhere quiet. While wandering, he meets another black man named Logan King, but Logan's behavior is bizarre. He dresses like someone from the 1950s and talks like an old white man. Later, Chris meets Jim Hudson, a famous blind art dealer who's familiar with Chris's work. Unlike the others, Jim doesn't make any racial remarks. He simply praises Chris's eye for photography. It's the first normal conversation Chris has had all day. Still uneasy, Chris goes upstairs and notices his phone charger has been unplugged. He suspects Georgina did it. When he tries to call Rod to vent, Rod jokes that the whole thing sounds like some weird sex slave operation run by white people, but Chris laughs it off. When he later talks to Georgina, her strange speech and outdated mannerisms unsettle him even more. He confides in her that being surrounded by so many white people makes him uncomfortable. She tries to respond, but instead starts crying uncontrollably, smiling through her tears. At this point, Chris knows something is seriously wrong, and he's about to find out just how dark things really are. Georgina insists that the Armitages treat her like family, then walks away acting strangely. Downstairs, Chris finds Dean chatting with some of the older guests. Spotting Logan nearby, Chris decides to sneak a photo of him to send to Rod. He's convinced he's seen this man somewhere before. But when he takes the picture, he forgets to turn off the flash. The moment the flash goes off, Logan's nose starts bleeding, and he suddenly freaks out, screaming, "Get out!" and lunging at Chris in a panic. The guests are left stunned. Dean tries to lighten the mood by suggesting a game, but Rose notices how shaken Chris looks and suggests they take a walk. While they're gone, the family and their guests hold a secret, silent auction, with Chris himself as the prize. The winner? None other than the blind art dealer, Jim Hudson. Out in the woods, Chris tells Rose he's been feeling strange ever since Missy hypnotized him, and he wants to go home. Back inside, he sends the picture of Logan to Rod, who quickly recognizes him. It turns out Logan is actually Andre Hayworth, a man who went missing months ago. Even creepier, Andre used to date one of their mutual friends, and now he's with a much older white woman. Rod freaks out, realizing something's seriously wrong, but before they can discuss more, Chris's phone dies. Now convinced they need to leave, Chris tells Rose to grab the car keys. She goes to get her bag, but while she's gone, Chris notices the closet door is slightly open. Curious, he checks inside, and what he finds makes his blood run cold. There are dozens of photos of Rose with different black men, and even Georgina and Walter among them. It's clear this is no coincidence. Chris isn't her first. Rose returns, pretending she can't find the car keys. As they go downstairs, the family is waiting. Jeremy blocks the door, Missy stands with her teacup, and Dean lurks nearby. The air is tense. Chris demands the keys, shouting for Rose to hand them over. That's when she drops the act, coldly revealing that she's been part of this twisted plan all along. Chris tries to fight his way out, but Missy taps her teacup, instantly putting him into a hypnotic trance. Paralyzed, he collapses as the family drags him into the basement. Back in the city, Rod grows worried after Chris stops answering his calls. He starts digging online and discovers a missing person report for Andre Hayworth, confirming his worst fears. Meanwhile, Chris wakes up tied to a chair in front of an old TV. A video begins playing. It's Rose's grandfather explaining that Chris was chosen for his genetic advantages. Then a clip of Missy stirring tea appears, putting Chris back under hypnosis. The next day, Rod goes to the police to report what's happening, but they just laugh at his theory that white people are kidnapping black men to use as slaves. Back at the Armitage house, Chris wakes again. On the screen, Jim Hudson explains the horrifying truth. The family performs brain transplants, taking the consciousness of old white people and implanting it into young black bodies, keeping a small piece of the original mind trapped in the sunken place. Jim wants Chris specifically for his photographer's eye. But Chris has a plan. Before the hypnosis can work again, he stuffs his ears with cotton from the chair's armrest to block out the sound. When Jeremy comes to take him for the surgery, Chris attacks, knocking him out with a lacrosse ball. He then uses a mounted deer head on the wall as a weapon, stabbing Dean and killing him. The chaos causes a candle to fall, setting the operating room on fire, trapping Jim inside. Chris heads upstairs, where Missy tries to use the teacup again, but he smashes it. She stabs him in the hand, and during the struggle he manages to turn the knife on her, killing her. As he reaches the front door, Jeremy attacks again, but Chris overpowers him, stabbing him in the leg and crushing his skull. Upstairs, Rose calmly listens to music while scrolling through photos of shirtless black men, already looking for her next victim. Chris takes the car keys and flees. On the road, he accidentally hits Georgina. Haunted by memories of his mother's death in a hit and run, he can't bring himself to leave her. He lifts her into the car, but that's a mistake. Georgina suddenly attacks him, causing the car to crash and killing her in the process. Rose rushes outside with a rifle, revealing that Georgina and Walter are actually her grandparents, whose brains were transplanted into those bodies. Walter tackles Chris to the ground, but in a last-ditch move, Chris uses his camera flash to awaken the real person trapped inside. Walter regains control just long enough to take the rifle, shoot Rose in the stomach, and then turn the gun on himself. Exhausted and injured, Chris walks toward Rose, who begs him to help her. Despite everything, he can't bring himself to kill her. Suddenly, flashing lights appear. A police car. For a moment, Chris freezes, terrified of what it might mean. But it's not the police, it's Rod, his best friend, in his TSA vehicle. Rod gets out, looks at Chris and says, "Man, I told you not to go to that house." The two drive away, leaving the burning Armitage estate behind, and Rose dying alone on the road. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of the exciting content coming your way. Every new video is made with you in mind, and I'd love to have you here for the journey. See you in the next one.